And hello again, and here we are back on my drive with my Moto Guzzi Cafe Racer project. So at the end of the last episode, I found a problem with some of the O-rings in the carbs, and that meant I had to buy 2 new rebuild kits. Those kits haven't quite arrived yet, but they're due any day now. Also, at the end of the last episode, I decided that the original points ignition system wasn't good enough, it wasn't creating a spark, and I didn't want to deal with the problems, so I ordered a brand new fully electronic ignition system from the States by Dynatech, and that system has just arrived, little box here. So in this episode then, we're going to open this box up, work out how it works, and get it on the bike. And so let's begin. Alright, so there's the other set of points. Now we need to remove this plate, I think. Alright, so here we have the old backing plate falling apart. As you can see, the seal's gone. Don't need that anymore because it's going to be replaced by the new Dynatech Series 3 ignition system. However, I think we do need to keep this, which is the advance and retard mechanism. That's why it's got springs on it, you see. As it spins faster, this will move and advance or retard the ignition. It's actually very dirty, so I think we'll give that a bit of a good clean. And finally, I've got to remove these condensers. We don't need them anymore, so let's get rid of them. Let's screw it onto the outside. Okay, that's fine. It came off, no problem. Okie doke, and I think I'll have to put the screw back in so we don't get any water or anything going into the distributor. And so with the condensers removed, you can see now how the body of this distributor can move, it can spin. It shouldn't do that, and the reason why it's doing it is because these bolts down here which clamp it down haven't been tightened up yet. And I think I did that back in the day because at the time I didn't know the precise location it should be at to get the timing spot on. So for now I'll leave it like that, but yeah, at some point I'm going to tighten it all up and then get the timing spot on. And so now I've cleaned out the insides of the distributor and I've opened the box, I've opened the Dyna box, and in the box we've really got 3 components. We've got the base plate here with the sensors, and that replaces the points base plate, so it goes something, I believe, get the orientation right, something like that, and these wires go to coils and so on. It also has the control box, the Dyna what's it called, electronic ignition box, which I've got to find a home for that. And finally there is, let's put that down there, don't want to drop it, we've got this little rotor, and that goes on the rotor which used to activate the points, but now it just goes on there. It's got a little Allen key on it, just tighten it up and it holds it securely. That then spins round and activates the sensors on this base plate, which tells the ignition when to fire. At least that's the plan. Oh, by the way, the electronic control box here has a little slot in its base so that you can pass through a big Jubilee clip, and that allows you to fasten it to any of the frame tubes. Now it's normally going to go here in this gap, but for me it's no good because I've got the coils there, but no problem because there's plenty of room around it, so it could go, you know, something like that or something like that. But I need to work a lot out, so first I need to go away and read the instructions very, very carefully and make sure I don't make any foolish mistakes. So come back when I'm ready to fit these parts to the bike. And so now I've fitted the base plate with its 2 sensors, 1 for each cylinder, and also the rotor that spins round as the engine spins. You can see here there's a white line on the rotor which you need to line up with a line etched on this top sensor here, which I've now done. That said, the whole thing might be way out. I won't know until I time it properly when I can look at the marks on the edge of the flywheel, but that can wait. Meanwhile, I've fixed this Dyna 3 ignition module to the top tube using the supplied Jubilee clip. I also wrapped the top tube in this Gorilla Tape just to protect it from this Jubilee clip. I don't want the powder coating being damaged by that digging into it. So next then I've got to work out where all these wires go. And so here are the instructions for wiring up the ignition, and it doesn't seem too difficult. So I made a start, and I have wired up the 3 wires from the sensor here to the appropriate wire in the ignition box, and that's easy because they're all the same colour with the same kind of connection, so that makes life a bit easy. I've now got to hook up the electronic ignition box to an earth, and it says very strongly, don't link it to something on the frame, link it to the engine. So here I am. I'm just going to undo this bolt, and I'm going to put this ring connection here. This is the earth that has to go to the engine. So I'm just going to put it on there for now until I can find a better place to put it, and that should be that. So now there are the 3 wires from the senders, or the sensors. There's the earth to the engine. What have I got left? I've got a green wire here, and I also have somewhere, here we are, a red wire. Now these are supposed to go to the original coils. That's where they've got this spade connector on the end, but my bike doesn't have original coils, so I need to change these for ring connectors to match up with the coil that I'm using at the moment. So these have to be cut off and replaced with ring terminals. Right, that's good. I've now also put heat shrink all the way along the length of these 2 wires, just to help them protect them and keep them separate from everything else, because they're going to the coils. So now I've got to heat up all this and shrink it down. So here goes. And so now I've completed all the wiring of the Danatec ignition system. It was really easy, really simple, and yeah, not the neatest bit of wiring I've ever done, but then again, I really didn't want to cut and shorten these wires, because each of them have a particular connection on the end, a little terminal that matches up with the terminals on the sensors that I didn't want to disturb. So with that done then, next step is to try it out and see if we get a spark. However, it's getting quite late now, and so I have to stop here, and we'll continue tomorrow when hopefully, fingers crossed, we can get a decent spark at the spark plug. And now here we are, it's next morning, and my job today is to time the new ignition system. And to do that, I've got to turn over the crankshaft very slowly so that I can look through this little window here and see the side of the flywheel, because on the side of the flywheel there are markings which tell you when the cylinders are at top dead center and so on. Therefore, to turn over the engine very slowly, I've got to remove this billet cover at the front of the engine, because behind there is the alternator and the end of the crankshaft. On the end of the crankshaft is a nut, so all I've got to do, remove this cover, get a socket and a driver so I can get on that nut, and that will in turn turn the crankshaft so I can watch this flywheel spinning around and hopefully spot when it's at the correct position, so it tells me when I'm on top dead center on both cylinders. So let's get started. And so now with an Allen key, as you can see, I can turn the engine over quite easily. Now I've also removed the spark plugs. And so now, looking through the window at the markings on the side of the flywheel, hopefully you can tell I've got a line with a D, and that tells me that I'm now at top dead center for the right hand cylinder. But when I set the timing for the ignition, I've got to be at full advance. So a little bit above this, there should be a line for full retard and a line afterwards for full advance. And where I'm struggling is they seem to be an awful long way away. So if you watch this now, hang on, wrong way, we go that way clockwise, we go very slowly. I'm struggling to see a line. In fact, it's 2 lines. Doesn't help that the flywheel's quite corroded, you know, and so there's a line there. I think that's full retard, and then we go a little bit more little bit more, and we see this line here with an arrow on it, and I'm pretty sure that's full advance, where I want to be. But my manual isn't very helpful. It doesn't indicate where they should be, or this one's actually got an arrow on it. So is it correct or not? I'm not sure. I need to go away and check online to see if that's correct or not. So fingers crossed, that there with the arrow on it, that is the correct marking for full advance on the right hand cylinder, which is the point I need to set the timing for the ignition. And so now with the engine set up at full advance for the right hand cylinder, I can now set up the timing for the right hand cylinder here. Of course, being a Guzzi, the right hand cylinder is timed with the left hand sender, but that's Guzzi for you. So I've already had to move this rotor to line up this white line with the line on the sensor. So now to actually get the timing right, what I have to do is spin the whole distributor like that to get it spot on. But first I've got to go and find either my multimeter or a little light so I can work out when the coils are getting power or not. And so next, to time the new ignition system, I've got to give it power. And since my wiring's not finished yet, I brought out a little test battery here and got it wired up to the new system. So when I connect this lead here, I should get power going to the Dyna electronic ignition system. So there's no smoke and fire, so that's always a good start. So now what I've got to do is take my test little indicator here. This lights up when it's got power going through it, and it says check to see if you've got power coming out of the red wire going to the right hand coil. And the red wire going to the right hand coil is right there on this coil here. So when I do this, it should light up. And does it? Let me have a look, a bit difficult to see. Yes, it does. Yeah, I've got power, so that's fine. So now what I've got to do is turn back the engine until it's on full retard, and at that time the light should go off because there's no power going to the coil. So I've now got to turn the engine over and do my check again. And so now I've got to turn the engine to get it on the mark for full retard on here. So can we find it? It's really difficult to see. Is that it? Yeah, I think I'm there now. Go back a little bit. Right, okay, that's it. It's now on full retard. So when I've connected up the battery again, I shouldn't be getting power from the red wire of the right hand coil. At least that's the aim. So let's see if that's the case. Put the power back on and we'll try again. Right, here we go. Oh, I am getting power, and that's not good. So I need now to adjust the ignition so I don't get power when I'm in that position. And to do that, for the right hand cylinder, I do the adjustment by turning the whole of the body of the distributor. Once I've done that, then the left hand side should now be perfect as well. But if it's not, you can also undo the sensor slightly and move them by about 10 degrees. But ideally I don't want to do that. So let's see if we can do this now. I shall do that again. Now, I've never actually set the timing on an old Guzzi before, and I've certainly not done it with a brand new Dynatech ignition system, but hopefully we can work it out and go from first principles and the instructions, and yeah, hopefully we'll get there. So I've now got power there, so if I turn this, will it go out? Should do. Yeah, okay. I'm turning it. It's just gone out there. It's now gone out. Is that correct? Or should it have gone out at full retard? I don't know. The instructions aren't that clear. Let me go and check them again, and hopefully we'll soon have it sorted out. And so now I think I've got the ignition timing right. And the way it works is that on this flywheel, there are 3 marks for the left-hand cylinder and 3 more for the right-hand cylinder. And of those 3 marks, one of them is labelled D or S, D for right and S for left. Above it is a mark that indicates where you're fully retarded on the ignition. A little way above that, another mark where you are fully advanced for the ignition, and that mark's got a little arrow on it, or at least I think so. So, at fully advanced, you should get power to the coil. I'm just checking it with this, with a wire going from the ignition system, and I did get that. But then as you turn the engine over and you pass the line that says fully retarded, the light should go out because the power should be cut. And it took me quite a while to get that point correct, and you get it correct by turning the distributor left and right until the light goes out. So now I've locked down the distributor with the 2 bolts so it can't move anymore. So next then, I've got here a brand new spark plug that I'm about to use. I'm going to put it in the right hand lead, go and get my big battery out so I can turn the engine over. We'll power up the ignition system with this little battery, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we should get a spark out of this spark plug. And if we don't, I'm going to be very upset. Right, so that was kind of good news. I did get a spark, but I also got a bit of a shock, which I don't think I should have done, but we'll look into that later on. So next then, I need to wait for the rebuild kits to arrive so I can rebuild the carbs with all new O-rings. When that's done, I can get the carbs on the bike, get some fuel in them, and then we'll see if the engine will fire up. Of course, even though I've seen a spark, it doesn't mean to say that the spark is happening at the correct time. If I've got the timing wrong or I've got it 180 degrees out, then I'm sure we'll soon find out, because the engine will be popping and banging and not wanting to start. But that's good news for me. I have got a spark, so I have done at least something right when it comes to this new ignition system. Oh, by the way, this plastic cover here, which goes over the new senders where the old points used to be, I'm not fitting that. It's a bit grotty and scratched. You can buy new ones, but I'm going to buy a nice aluminium one, a nice polished aluminium one, the next time I order parts from my local Moto Guzzi specialist, so that'll have to wait. Right, well, it's now just starting to rain a bit more, so we'll stop here and continue when those kits arrive so I can rebuild the carbs. And now the Deloto Carb rebuild kit that I've ordered has just arrived. As you can see, you don't get much with it, but you get enough. All the little seals I need are little O-rings. So let's get these O-rings on the carbs, get the carbs back on the bike, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it might help the engine to fire up at last. And now here we are back on my drive again. The carbs are back on the bike because I've rebuilt them with new O-rings. And so now we're going to see if we can start the bike one more time. So I've got my batteries here ready to go, everything's wired up. And I've got some hose here just going down into the float bowl. So I'm just going to inject fuel directly in there, and hopefully something will happen. Now I'm not going to fit the fuel tank yet, and just doing this should be enough just to get enough fuel in the float bowl to let the carbs work. I've also noticed that the starter motor's been getting a little bit unhappy. It's not turning the engine over too well, and it is the original starter motor. So what I've done is I've ordered myself a brand new one. I was surprised how cheap it was. It's just £72 for a brand new starter motor for my bike, which is amazing. I thought it'd be a lot more than that, but no. And in fact, a rebuild kit for that starter motor is almost £72, so it's not worth doing. So when that arrives, we'll get it on the bike, and hopefully the engine will turn over a lot happier than it is at the moment, because this battery is pretty big and charged up, and it struggles to turn the engine over with that old starter motor in place. So hopefully we should be okay. Right, so we've got some fuel in there at least. I'm not sure how much. I'll just keep going until it's all gone, and I'll also inject some fuel directly into the throats of the carb. I don't have a throttle cable yet because that's quite a complicated thing to do on this bloody bike, but I can just do it by hand and just inject fuel directly into the throat of the carbs just to help things on a bit. I'm not expecting the engine to fire up right away, but if it just pops and bangs and tries to start, I'll be very happy indeed, because I've not heard it even try to start yet. So let's see what to do now. We've got to connect up all the various connections here. So let's see what's going to happen now. As I say, I think this starter motor is getting a bit tired, but let's see what happens next. Yeah, I'm getting smoke from here, which isn't a good sign. So that's the wire. Yeah, that's this wire here, and it is bloody hot. Yeah, I really need some bigger some bigger cables. I've got some old ones in my car which are a bit chunky and a little bit worn out, so I made these up, but maybe I've got to make up some more. Yeah, because these are getting rather hot. But you can see then where the starter motor wasn't returning the engine over very quickly. So we'll let it cool down a bit. Let's just, that is actually very hot. We'll take that off there. How's this one doing? Yeah, this is nice and cool. I might double up or triple up on this one as well, just to help it. I do have an extra wire somewhere I can use, and I'll also inject more fuel into the carbs, because I've no idea how much fuel are in there. That little syringe doesn't give you much fuel, so I'll just put a lot more in and hope for the best. So we'll continue in a minute when I've done that and these cables have cooled down a little bit. And now I'll put the last of my fuel into the float bowls for these little pipes. So third time lucky perhaps, but I can't say I'm too optimistic, so let's give it another go. No, not anything at all. And now I've removed both spark plugs, and I'm going to check on this one here, on this side, to see if I can see a spark when I earth it to the cylinder head. So, wish me luck. Just going to get the engine to turn over again, and we'll see what happens. Oops. Oh, Jesus Christ. I got a shock then. It might be because I'm holding both sides, I don't know. But yeah, I shouldn't be getting a shock off this bloody thing. Let me try that again. That was not good. Let me see. Yeah, I'm getting a good spark there. I'm not sure why I got a shock. It may have been because this was holding against the... I just happened to have it touching the metal of the spark plug as I looked over here. Yeah, that wasn't very pleasant. But I did get a good spark. So the question is, why am I not getting the bike firing up? Either there's still an issue with the carbs and maybe I'm not putting enough fuel in it yet, or I've got an issue with the spark and the ignition system which isn't sparking at just the right time. So I've got to double check all that yet again. But right now it's just starting to rain, so I have to stop for the day and we'll continue perhaps tomorrow or sometime in the week. So join me then and we'll keep on trying to get this old engine to fire up.